to Biztech's APAC Cybersecurity Show. Hi, I'm Brian Fernandez. Today we're spotlighting an old prominent name in innovation, BlackBerry. Now, BlackBerry was prominent in its innovative smartphones that featured secure messaging and email. Now, once a leader in mobile technology, it has evolved to focus on enterprise software and cybersecurity. Now, today we have with us its CISO, Christine Gadsby. She's the CISO at BlackBerry's Cybersecurity. Christine, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, Christine, give us an overview of BlackBerry and then your background as well.
Yeah, hey, a great question. So all of the wonderful security software that ran in the handset in our company for years, the phones that you bought that you loved and that you bought for a lot of reasons because of the security factor, we have pulled that software out of the handset and we now sell that as a service to our customers who still believe that security is fundamental to all kinds of parts of their business, whether that's endpoint detection or mobile device management or managed detection and response. We do that in secure communications with our ad hoc crisis management system, and then our SecuSuite products, which is secure voice encryption.
Now, I want to zoom in because we're based in the Asia Pacific region. I want to zoom in on the current state of cybersecurity in APAC. What are the main challenges facing CISOs and organizations in 2024 and we are in the second half of the year?
Yeah, and this is such a fun topic to discuss. And for your listeners' context, I have spent quite a bit of time in your region investing. BlackBerry's heavily invested in the APAC region. So you just got back from my, I think, third or fourth trip out there in the last year, headed to go back again in October. Just because one of the things that I noticed about the APAC region that is kind of where the US was just, not too long ago, is the challenge of kind of that fragmented approach. The region itself is just, set with a diverse set of economies. Each has varying levels of cybersecurity maturity and regulatory frameworks. And, the region is just sort of starting to get a handle on how to, coordinate all of those things. And that disparity makes it really difficult. It makes it difficult to establish unified processes to cyber threats. Cross-border collaboration becomes an issue. I think that's the first thing. The second thing, like the US, and we have that in common, and North America in general, in fact, Europe as well, is the shortage of professionals. We all know that just raw talent and making sure that the talent pipeline is built and making sure that we are forecasting correct for future years of what cybersecurity talent is. And then, just the pure sophistication increase of criminals in general. They're getting smarter. And as we adopt things like AI, they're adopting things like AI, and it just becomes a technical kind of warfare ground. And so you have kind of that and the regulatory compliance. So you have kind of those four things make your region really complicated. And again, some of that's not unique. Some of that, is a global problem. But the last thing I guess I'll add onto that in the challenge area is that a lot of your economy is based on being really mature in technology, which also,
Yes.
backs all of the things that I just said. It makes it 10 times worse when your economy really is driven. And I'm sure a lot of people listening, their revenue is driven based on those things. So I think those are probably the top things that I think about when I'm there.
Okay, I want to zoom in first on the talent problem, because as you said, that's a global problem. That's not just an APAC problem. Walk me through some. You've just opened a facility in Malaysia. I think that is one of those things that is addressing that issue. Walk us through some of the initiatives that BlackBerry is doing to kind of narrow the skills gap.
Yeah, another great question. So, and one of the reasons why I am deeply invested personally and professionally, and just really excited to work in a company that really supports investment in a region and not just doing security, but really we focus on the cultural aspects of making sure that we don't just come in and sell you stuff, but we come in and make sure it's actually doing the security work. So BlackBerry opened the BlackBerry Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Kuala Lumpur. It's an amazing research training center. It has certification training programs at BlackBerry and Rogers, a cybersecurity catalyst, with Toronto Metropolitan University National Center for Training, Research and Innovation is offering world-class certifications for leadership in cybersecurity programs in Malaysia. Really, it's partnering with the SANS Institute also. So it's really bringing together a collaborative approach for an enterprise background to come in and really to sponsor bigger groups to get trained in cybersecurity. So it isn't just focused on the one or two or the three things, but it's partnering with other enterprises or any kind of regulatory body to say, okay, we have 50 people and we need to have them go learn this skill. How do we do that? Right? That's not done alone. It's not done with one company. It's done with many partners coming together to support government and local regulatory compliance. Is part of that is we come in and we have to understand what you're trying to train for. If your top thing in your regulatory compliance areas is we need to have better telemetry in our endpoint data. Well, we want to come in and help you learn how to do that. So that's the regulation and that's what you need. It focuses on different levels of training. So you can just take the basic training parts and learn how to go from zero to, SOC analyst or something sort of entry level where you can actually have a job. And it goes all the way to expertise level where you can spend a lot of time training. And to help close the gender gap, which is a big one and one of the areas that I'm really personally focused on, the Catalyst is also teaming up with SANS and Rogers to offer scholarships for women candidates for the school. So there's lots of things going on here. And we've put, I believe, about 700 people through the center so far since it's opened in March. So we're doing quite a bit of getting people in and getting them trained and getting them back out into your workforce. So the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence, I just can't say how proud I am to be a part of supporting your region in that area. And I can't wait to watch it. I do talk to the Rogers folks a lot too. There's a couple of people that I'm close to, and they're so excited to partner with us on this. So again, I really think that's the key to helping close the talent gap is really partnership.
And Christine, as you've explained this to us, one of the things that really struck me is you've taken really, and BlackBerry has taken an ecosystem approach, really to make sure that you're not just going in at one level, you're going in at multiple levels, you're engaging multiple stakeholders in order to ensure that sustained learning across the ecosystem, and obviously then increasing the whole level of competency of the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, upskilling and reskilling too. There's what I love about your region is there are so many people looking to re-enter the workforce. They're either mothers who have had children, or there may be people that have taken their first dip in retirement and decided not to do that anymore, and that they really have skills that they want to take advantage of. Or it's people who are in roles right now where they're thinking, what, I think cybersecurity sounds fantastic. I want to go learn more. Those are all really great ways to reskill or upskill current talent, to refocus them into industries maybe that need their help more. I constantly run into people, either locally to you or locally to me, where they're like, I really think I really want to get into this. I just don't know where to start. Well, the CCOE is the place to start. You just call them and they'll tell you what you need to do, just listening to what it is you want to achieve. That's what they're there for. And partnering with SANS makes the coursework just, you're not taking coursework that's not trusted. You're taking coursework that has been through, the ringer of coursework. So it is the best. So I can't, the reskilling and the upskilling is just going to be really important for your region.
And also, I think one of the things that is really important, especially in this era of disruption, is the fact that some of the tech skills that you have may be increasingly obsolete. And this is a very good way for you to reskill and upskill to take advantage of the skills gaps and continue to get paid the great salaries that tech people are paid.
But if you think about this, technology, what were you and I doing 10 years ago, right? It's not even close to what we're doing today. And we've had to evolve just like everybody else has had to evolve. And guess who else is evolving? Criminals, right? They're making my job harder. They're making your job harder. They're giving us more things to talk about. But yes, absolutely. We all have to evolve. And what's really difficult about not only closing the skills gap in cybersecurity, it's the evolvement of cybersecurity. It's never going to stay static. It's like, I compare this when I'm talking to other leaders in the industry, I compare it to like an accountant. An accountant learns to run numbers, and they're running numbers and they're running numbers, and they just get better at it over time, right? And maybe some things change with how they look at it or what's important, but our whole landscape can change in a month. So you're constantly having to reskill. And then you take on top of that regulation. Regulation is driving so much change. So if it's not a criminal activity that's thinking about, the next named thing that's going to disrupt the world, it's, the fact that regulatory requirements are changing, or, procurement. This is something that we haven't talked a lot about, but you and I both know procurement's ruling the world right now. People are getting, a lot of regulation is getting so much smarter. They're just figuring out how to gate it at the dollar sign. And if you figure out how to gate it at the dollar sign, the board cares. And guess what? If the board cares, then you've made your security point, and you don't need to convince any other people because you've just impacted revenue. So you have this big circular motion happening with sort of the culture shift that's happening in cybersecurity. And that needs training and involvement, and it needs every role. Cybersecurity is not just people looking at threat data. It's a business, right? It's its own little mini business inside a business. So you have to run it like that. So I think we lose that sometimes,
Christine, I want to zoom in on what you just said about procurement, because people don't talk about that as much. You've just released your software supply chain research based on and since we're in Malaysia, let's talk about Malaysia, 100 high-value Malaysian companies. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the key findings from that research?
Yes, and this was one of my most favorite things about this market is I love really understanding the market to help the market itself, and not just go in there and say, we're really good at security. We are, but if we're not good at security for you, it doesn't matter. So that's the first thing. So I wanted to do, and I've done this is actually the second version of this study that I've done, this research study, but really looking at what is the impact of your actual supply chain. The Malaysian market, it's so fascinating to me that, the semiconductor business drives so much of the need for just basic economy. So yeah. Your economy at scale is a supply chain, right? You're not securing a company or an endpoint. You're securing a supply chain, meaning that you have, I think about it like we bake a cake. And this is the analogy that I use in every leadership meeting that I go to. If you're selling a chocolate cake, and you're responsible for that chocolate cake, you have to understand what parts of it are where and why, because that's what you're securing. And that is where procurement is, is really circling that. You're seeing a lot of the US driving. So North America is really driving a lot of, we're gonna stop paying you if you don't do these things. Well, that's a different story. So what we did was we went back to this research data that we've done before, and we asked a lot of really important questions. And some of the answers, I'm never surprised by some of the answers, but this time I got data that I was not expecting, and I'll share some of that with you. So 79% of the organizations local to your geographic area, 79% of those organizations reported experiencing a cyber attack on or in their software supply chain. I was not expecting that. Wow. It's very high. That's very high. That's higher than I would see in a similar survey in my own geographic region. And so that's 80% somewhere in their supply chain over the last 12 months, I'll add. That just kind of goes to point out that the supply chain is really vulnerable, right? When you're really looking at the parts of it, it really is vulnerable. And we saw that with our most recent outage. We did see how vulnerable just, you pull one Jenga piece out of that supply
chain.
And
this is the CrowdStrike incident, isn't it? That literally just shut everybody down.
It did, and it wasn't, and that's just how we have to look at our supply chain is like that incident. It's all very vulnerable. And when you hit one part of it, it's possible to just break the whole thing. So that 80% was really surprising to me that there was such data that people, number one, knew about, and number two, they shared it. That was just amazing to me. So now this is another percentage, just a data point that everybody listening right now should be really, really keen on, which is 81% of Malaysians admitted to discovering hidden participants within their software supply chain. So over the last year, 81% of these same people found out there were parts of their supply chain they didn't even know they had. So that's crazy. I mean, you got a semiconductor part, you're selling it, and 2 months into the year, you're like, oh, okay, well, hey, this person's in my supply chain. They've been there for 12 years. I didn't know they were even there. Okay, you can't secure what you don't know, right? So if you don't have the telemetry in the first place, you're not securing it. So that's another just staggering data point to me that I was blown away by when I read my own report. I just went, oh my
so
God.
let me ask you something, Christine. This is staggering. So if I'm a CIO or I'm a board member of and I'm listening to this, what does my organization need to do to address
Great
this
question.
as quickly as possible?
Yeah, great question. First of all, you got to know where your hats are and you're baking a cake scenario. So listen, in a supply chain, whether it's a semiconductor or a satellite or a manufacturing line, or doesn't matter what business you are, the rules are the same. If you're a CIO or a CTO or CEO or a C anything, you got to ask yourself, what hat are you wearing? Are you wearing the hat of a software supplier? Like, you're building a widget part. I call all software supply chains widgets. You sell a widget, you sell something to somebody else.
Yeah.
So are you a supplier? Do you make an embedded operating system and you're selling it to another supplier who then sells it to a customer? So you're just a thing, Are you a seller? Do you sell something to somebody else who makes something else? Or are you a packager and seller? So what hat do you wear? What is your end liability? Start there, because all of those scenarios are a different liability. If you're a software producer or you're a software seller or you're a software reseller, you have a different liability picture in that. If you are the end reseller of a widget with lots of parts in that supply chain behind you upstream, you are responsible for all of their security. It doesn't matter who did it, right? If you think about this from the recent outage, right? And bless their hearts, they handled it so well, to be honest, right? But think of all of their supply chain that they had to be responsible for in that moment, that they caused all those things. They're responsible for everything they did before. It didn't matter. Nobody cares who was in their stuff. So think about that if that were a semiconductor business or a manufacturing plant or something like that. If you're hit with a cyber attack and it causes other chain reactions upstream or downstream, you're responsible for whatever you took money for. That's how it works. So that, if you're a C-level and wondering, gosh, how do I rationalize that? It's telemetry. You just need to know where it is. And then you can start. And that's sort of when I talk to other executives in this space, that is where we land on. You just need the telemetry to start figuring out what is your supply chain. And when people start digging, they're always surprised. When they don't look, they don't know. And then they look and they're like, wow, I did not know all this stuff was in my software. So I think the basic fundamentals are just know how you make money, know where your revenue is coming in, because that'll tell you where your risk profile is, right? That'll tell you, where you should go dig to make sure you can guarantee that revenue so that you're not answering to either your customers or your board. Because those are the, the two pieces of that.
And here's the thing, it's about going to look for stuff, not assuming that everything is hunky-dory. And I think that's a big takeaway from this, because I think as you alluded to, with the numbers are staggering and it's frightening as well.
Well, and there's one more data set I want to share with you on these numbers that was really surprising to me. And this is shows the shift in the landscape, because it's different than the numbers we've ran before, which is 71% of those same organizations actually reported some sort of financial loss in whatever they had gone through. So whether or not they discovered something they didn't know about that they had to either get rid of or fix, or they suffered that attack, that first data point that I gave you around, 79% of those organizations had suffered attacks. 71% of those same organizations reported having some kind of financial loss. 66%, and this is the number that surprised me out of this data set, was that 66% suffered reputational damage. So what we're seeing with the increase in regulation is we're also seeing an increase in having to disclose and report.
And that's a very important, Christine, I want to interrupt you here, because unlike in your geography, in many countries in Southeast Asia in particular, but also the broader APAC region, disclosure is not required, although the rules have now changed in markets like Singapore and Malaysia with the new regulations that's come in. And you will start to see then the reputational risk really being a big factor.
Absolutely. And you're seeing it just with this data is the first time I've seen those numbers shift ever. And in North America also, we ran the same questions in North America and they were higher. So what we're seeing in North America with new reporting regulation is companies now are valuing their brand with security, because what they're saying to their board is, hey, it's not just the security stuff we got to do. If we don't do it, guess what? We got to tell people we're not doing it. So we run the risk not only of the security incident, we run the risk of having to report the security incident, which, you know, is a different ball game, because you're taking your brand now and you're saying, all right, board, this is the risk we're going to run. And so you are seeing those numbers start to come out. And then, you know, we saw some of the same numbers that you'd expect us to see in, like, you know, data loss and things like that, which are, you know, kind of consistent across the board. We're always in the high 60s to 70% of companies seeing that. But really, we are seeing the shift of the other high numbers, barriers to things like this. The couple of numbers that we saw that were also staggering was that most of those same companies, their biggest barrier to reducing this was technical understanding. So they're complex. They're realizing that that what they're trying to do is so complex that they're saying, okay, it's not just security awareness training now, and it's not just lack of people. We just don't understand the technology. So we've got lots of complication coming in, especially for Malaysia. You know, we've got a really complicated semiconductor business with, you know, lots of fragmented technologies coming in and lots of different goals, really technically complicated stuff to understand. And you don't have the people, and then you don't have the technical ability to understand it. You're sort of double stuck, if that makes sense, right?
And so this is why that center that you've just opened in Malaysia really helps you address this issue, isn't it? That skills gap needs to be bridged.
Absolutely. And the skills gap needs to be bridged for Malaysia, right? For you, not for what everybody else thinks you need, for your unique business market. And there's no way to do that unless you get partners. You got to have government, you got to have some enterprise, you got to have some training and education, some really gritty stuff that will get into the market meet with you. You got to have local people to guide that. And you got to have people like us that have done it before. You know, we know how to do this. We've done it for years. So yes, you have to get that partnership. And again, it's successful right now. So I can't wait to see some of these numbers come out to help bridge all those things together.
Christine, it's been a fascinating conversation. I've learned a lot, and I think we could probably go on for the next 1 hour and cover a lot more issues. We must do more of these shows. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of things. One, if you're interested in listening and you want to know more about the Cybersecurity Center of Excellence and how you can get training for your staff or for yourself, or you just want to talk to me, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Christine Gadsby. Just search Christine Gadsby BlackBerry. I'm the only one. So you can find me, send me a message. I do reply to every message, or at least I try to. And the second thing is, one of the bigger things we're seeing an increase is going to things like managed detection and response. To have a third party come in and help you do some of these telemetry things so it's not all on you. And we're seeing a lot of small to mid companies start to do that versus try to do every single thing themselves, so they can focus more on training and things at the CCOE. So that's my thing to focus on for you is to look at managed detection and response and to bring people into the CCOE.
Christine, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we've been speaking to Christine Gadsby. She is the CISO at BlackBerry's Cybersecurity. I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to Biztech's APAC Cybersecurity Show. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.